The Resident Evil franchise, with its renewed success, would continue their victory lap with even more slappers. But how much of it is a slap in the face? I'm Saggy, and I'll be going over the worst parts of Resident Evil 8. With this being a sequel, you'd think it would take what made the previous title great and expand upon it. Well, RE8 sorta does this, but alters the formula to something akin to RE4. 7 was an intimate experience that focused more on the horror aspects, like the original trilogy, and 8 shifts the core gameplay into a linear, action-packed adventure, like RE4. One of the first encounters you face is against an onslaught of foes in an abandoned village, like RE4. You eventually come across a shop that lets you buy items and upgrade guns, like RE4. Hell, you even get a totally not attaché case with the temporary inventory, like you know who. There are just so many examples of this game taken from 4 and throwing it in your face, almost as if to nostalgia bait. Hey, remember Del Lago? Well, take a look at this. It would have been nice to have seen this entry be its own thing for the most part, and not scarecrow together fan service. This game suffers from a similar fate as the previous with its locations, and it's a shame that wasn't something that was polished. Once you're through what is essentially the prologue, you have to move around the map through 4 locations total, starting with the castle. Lady D's abode is reminiscent of the Baker house, where you're exploring the building to find key items to progress. You know, typical survival horror shit. But after you dispatch Alcina, you move on to the next area, and this is where it starts to sour a bit. The castle offers the best survival horror experience, while the rest of the locations present much less and are far more linear. You still find the key items, but there's almost no choice in the order they are acquired. This is where the RE4-ness really kicks in, and you either love it or hate it, just like back in the day. If every location was as in-depth and exploration-driven as the castle, the different environments would for sure be more memorable, but as they stand, they feel more like a means to an end, rather than areas of substance. We can try and look past the many faults of how the narrative plays out, but there's no denying there are more negatives than positives. If you thought the previous game had some silly fantasy bullshit going on with the telepathic mold, well, buckle your fucking seatbelt, because this game takes that shit to the moon and beyond. Let's address the elephant in the room. Chris decides in order to protect Ethan, he'll leave him in the dark about the entire situation that he is practically at the center of. Imagine someone blows up your house and just tells you that the reason doesn't concern you. The fuck you mean it doesn't concern me? I was living there. And it's not like Chris isn't given multiple opportunities to fill Big E in. He just makes an executive decision not for the sake of the plot. Even without Ethan and Rose's transportation to the safe location being compromised, why would he leave him in the dark about his own fucking wife? Because Miranda might have him under her control? Considering they knew Miranda's identity when they pumped her full of lead, they wouldn't have been able to spot Ethan in the same manner? Then you have Miranda herself, and her lackeys, of course. It's a classic case of too many chefs in the kitchen. There are 5 total antagonists, so of course not all of them will get the spotlight they deserve, especially in a game that likes to drip feed info through found notes. Going back to the point made about the castle, Lady Dimitrescu feels the most complete, with the others almost feeling like filler. Instead of killing her off in the castle, wouldn't it have been better to allow the player to leave the castle and search for more items while she stalks you through the various parts of the village? since she's the only stalker in the game, other than that fucking baby, your reprieve would come from entering the other lords' domains, which would be their own castle, so to speak. But wishful thinking, I suppose. I just wish the four lords were more prominent so they don't feel like another box checked off in completing the game. A culmination of what takes this game down a couple notches is the linearity. It's a point that can't be overstated and has been echoed 1,000 times. The castle is the best part. The devs clearly listened to the feedback about the first entry and softened the blow in many areas, such as Ethan being as interesting as blank paper, or the prologue being damn near an hour of slow build-up, but they almost doubled down in other aspects. One of the major points of contention was in 7 after the house was overcome. The game provides less exploration and puzzles to eventually become a chore to finish by the boat. The game never slows down too much or becomes a slog, but some of that unironically might be the issue. There are puzzles to be found in the game, but absolutely nothing on par with the Lucas area, and nothing really sticks with you. In 7, you find a tape where you play as Mia for like 5 minutes, but it reveals a future area that piques your interest and can in time make your way there. Almost no part of the game gives you this foreshadowing. The most you get is notes and this one section where you run through a cave sequence of lichens chasing you and visit that cave once more near the end of the game. For the most part, areas will play out the same, and the most diversity you will get is in the exploration of the village, which isn't mandatory, and the castle, which lets you search for masks. But what do you think? Maybe you actually liked Ethan and wanted an interaction with more than just Chris. Maybe this take on the survival horror genre is your cup of tea over the slow burn experience. Let me know below. Like and subscribe. I'm Saggy, and I'm also